So I'd like to say thank you to all of our speakers for joining us today. So community interest companies, what they are, what's the future for CICs, really interesting discussion I hope we'll have after our presenters today. We're going to hear first of all from Dale Walters at the CIC Regulator office, and he's also joined by his colleague Donna today. He's going to be coming in on some of the Q&A at the end, I think. Once we've heard from Dale, we're going to bring in Malcolm Harris. Malcolm is with the Social Enterprise Accountancy CIC, and then we're going to hear from Alex Stobart at Mydex CIC as well, just for some thoughts. So I know we've got a couple of PowerPoint presentations, and then Alex is just sharing some thoughts with us, and then we'll be open to Q&A. So without holding you back any further, I'm going to hand over to Dale and start today's session. Thank you very much, Dale.
Thank you, Naomi. I'll just share my presentation with everyone. I hope you can all see.
Yep.
Okay.
And perhaps while Dale's just bringing his presentation up, Dale is quite quiet on the mic, so you may just want to just turn your volume up while Dale's speaking. We've asked him to pretend he's speaking to everyone in Swansea as well. So if you just turn your volume up, you may need to just while Dale's speaking. Thank you, Dale.
So, good morning, everyone. My name is Dale Walters, and I'd like to welcome you to this presentation on community interest companies, or CICs, as we refer to them in the CIC Regulator's office. I'm the Deputy Regulator of Community Interest Companies, and we're based in Companies House in Cardiff. I've been in post now for nearly a year, and I have to say that time has really flown by. It's been really interesting for me to kind of get to grips with the world of CICs, understand what they are, and indeed to understand the wider social enterprise, world. It's been a real learning curve for me. So I really enjoy talking about CICs and learning about them and speaking to them directly as well. So I really hope you will also enjoy this presentation. I should take around 20 minutes, and I've been told to speak loudly, so I really hope you can all hear me okay. If you can move on to the next slide, please, Naomi. Okay, so I will be talking quickly. I'll be talking loudly, but please don't worry, because all the information which I share with you will be available on our website, which I'll show at the end of the presentation. Okay, next slide, please, Naomi. So during this presentation, I'll be discussing, if you click, please, Naomi, what a CIC is, their background, the differences between a CIC and an ordinary company and a charity, as well as the benefits and advantages of being a CIC. I'll talk about the responsibilities of being a CIC, and finally, we'll be talking about the compliance and role of the regulator. And then on to the next slide. I think it's important, as with anything, to kind of start at the beginning and give you a kind of bit of background into where CICs came from, how they came to be. So in 2005, the business community recognized a need for the legal form of social enterprise, and this was specifically an alternative to a charity or an ordinary company. It was particularly to benefit the community rather than shareholders and members, and this concept had cross-party government support. The Companies Act 2004 and the Community Interest Company Regulation 2005 came into effect, and the CIC office opened in July 2005. Naomi, if you want to, you can click on the next bit. There we go. So in terms of the CIC team itself, we have a small but dedicated group of team members. There are 7 of us, and we work in the office of the CIC Regulator. We're responsible for the registration and regulation of CICs for the whole of the UK. We work particularly closely with Companies House, Cardiff, Scotland and Northern Ireland, especially with regard to the examination of applications, because this is a dual process. We also work with other government offices, including the Insolvency Service, Charity Commission, and the Business Support Helpline also. On to what is a CIC? So this is a question we're asked a lot, particularly by people who want to be one and they don't even necessarily understand exactly what a CIC is or what it's designed for. So a CIC is an ordinary limited company that has to follow company law as well as CIC requirements. It can be limited by guarantee or limited by shares. It may also be a private limited company or indeed a public limited company. If you can click again, please, Naomi. So at the end of the last year, there were over 25,000 CICs in total. And particularly because of that, we're meeting with Social Enterprise Scotland, I like to give a bit of a Scottish feel. So there are currently 1,453 CICs in Scotland. They represent 6% of the CICs on the public record, according to our stats. They're split into 1,251 which are limited by guarantee and 202 which are limited by shares. And I think this is the picture we see with our KICs in general, the overall majority of which are limited by guarantee, with the remainder obviously being limited by shares, and those that are limited by shares are subject to a dividend cap. This really, if you can click again, Naomi, this really ensures the assets and profits of a KIC are benefiting the community. A KIC must pass a community interest test. They have to make a statement their activities will benefit their particular community rather than members and directors of the actual KIC. And click again, please. KICs are subject to a compulsory asset lock. This means all their assets belong to the company and benefit their community. And if you can click again, please, Naomi. Furthermore, every KIC has to submit an annual community interest report with its accounts. The report tells the regulator that the KIC's activities during the year. It also details their relationship with stakeholders, and this report is available on the Companies House public register, and this will ensure openness and transparency. I just noticed in the chat somebody asked for those stats. I will repeat them again at the end if that's all right, and perhaps I'll put them in the chat if that's easier. I know they're quite interesting. As with any business, a KIC has to show good corporate governance as per company law. And governance arrangements are in the KIC Articles of Association. These have to be in line with best practice guidance. KICs really should take their governance responsibilities seriously, and the regulator will want them to ensure they are in the best interest of both the KIC and the community. Very few types of KICs can't become KICs, but it's really important that people understand KICs should not exist for political or such lobbying related purposes. If you want to move on to slide 6, please, Naomi. Thank you. This is a big question we're asked very often, which is, what is the difference really? Firstly, and I'd say most importantly, it is the social purpose. KICs are really set up with the main purpose of benefiting their community rather than to make their directors or members wealthy. Ordinary companies may have no such purpose. If you click again. Exactly. And again, please. A really important part of KICs is the fact that they actually welcome regulation. This provides them with a badge of assurance. And I think regulation is generally appreciated by investors and the public alike. Obviously, ordinary companies aren't regulated. If you click again, please, Naomi. As previously mentioned, KICs have a compulsory asset lock, which is enshrined in the KIC articles and it can't be removed. An ordinary company doesn't have any sort of asset lock, mandatory asset lock. Anyway. KICs have to file their annual community interest company report with their accounts, and this states what the KICs achieved, and it's placed on public record. And this provides that extra level of accountability, obviously not shared by ordinary companies. And again, please, Naomi. If a KIC is limited by shares, the dividend cap ensures the profits stay within the company, and that 65% of the KIC's profits are reinvested back into the community, or company, sorry, or used for the community it was set up to serve. Obviously, this isn't the case for an ordinary limited company. And lastly, it is quite straightforward for an ordinary limited company to convert to a KIC. But this is quite important, that they need to stay as limited by guarantee or limited by shares when converting. And I know that we've had a number of queries about that of late. And then on to slide 7. The second most asked question I would say is, what is the difference between a KIC and a charity? And I found this particularly interesting when I was actually learning over the course of the last year. Firstly, charities are subject to greater regulation than KICs. Charities are run by a board of trustees, but KICs can be run by just one director. And this gives them more freedom in decision making. Charities can receive tax benefits, but obviously KICs cannot. And then the next, click again, please, Naomi. When it comes to KICs, they can operate as a business and can make a profit. So they can hire and fire employees, pay directors, and if limited by shares, they can issue dividends. Charities cannot. KICs have flexibility in changing their objects. For example, and this is like our kind of classic example, a KIC could, its main activity could be a care home, but the care home for the elderly, and they might want to diversify and provide childcare. And the fact is, as long as the KIC can prove to the regulator they're still delivering community benefit, they can do this. They have that kind of flexibility, whereas charities cannot. And then on to slide 8. So I suppose, what are the benefits and advantages of being a KIC, other than what I've kind of already touched upon? Firstly, I would say, and we would all echo the fact that KICs are relatively quick and easy and inexpensive to set up. We as the CIC Regulator's Office provide all the documents and forms and step-by-step guidelines on our website you need in order to understand how to go about setting up a KIC, and you can view and download them with relative ease. Next, I think the KIC brand offers reassurance to stakeholders and the general public alike, because it comes with that statutory oversight, which I think people really value. Next, I think there's additionally the fact that the community interest company provides the familiarity of the corporate model and limited liability to its members. I think general public are usually familiar with the way that companies operate and how they are set up. And members have a personal, limited personal liability should the KIC fail. I think that gives a lot of confidence. And lastly, I think the fact that KICs also have the additional statutory clauses that cannot be removed. Every KIC's constitution has certain clauses that are unable to be removed, including the assets lock, which I mentioned previously, and members and directors' voting rights. If we move on to slide 9. Funding is a real hot topic, I think, with KICs, and I think it's something which I think as the KICs team we are very aware of, and some of the challenges that our KICs have around this. Firstly, I think we tend to advise our KICs that they need to be able to target the right funding bodies. If you click for me, please, Sir Naomi. We try to be as clear with KICs as we can that there is no guarantee of funding, but as a KIC with the guaranteed asset lock, the community benefit test, they are recognised and respected by third sector funders and investors. And the third sector funders and investors may consider investing in good business opportunities which are regulated, but also, most importantly, do fulfil a social purpose. Next, we advise KICs that, as with any business, a strong business plan is required. Ultimately, KICs are businesses, but they're businesses with a social purpose, and they need to succeed in the same way as an ordinary business would. And next, I think, as a KIC, careful consideration should be given to the social impact that the business will make. And KICs have the ability to clarify this as part of their annual community interest report, which should really be specific and relevant to the community that the business supports. We do provide further details of funding bodies from banks, social investment bodies, and business toolkits on the CIC Regulator website to try and help our KICs in this regard, but I understand it can be a challenging area. On to the next slide, please. When it comes to the CIC Regulator's role, it's really important that people understand what that really means for the regulator and for KICs. Firstly, I would say the regulator is an independent public official who decides whether a company is eligible to be formed as a KIC. The regulator oversees the KIC's continuing conduct and activities. If you click for me, please, Naomi. A really important aspect of the CIC regulator's role is the fact that it was set up by statute to practice light touch regulation. Generally, KICs are free to operate as they see fit, as long as they continue to benefit the community that they were set up to serve. They also need to follow the CIC regulations that obviously we discussed earlier. And next, I would say that the regulator fully considers each and every application received and always has the final say on its approval. The regulator pays really close attention to the incorporation annual return of KICs, because these reports are a clear indicator of the success or otherwise of a KIC. And the overall statistics reflect how KICs are performing across the UK. I know that the regulators previously hosted KIC technical panels, and it's something which we've always been really keen to reinstate. Ultimately meeting with members from the third sector and those interested in the sector, really to inform the ongoing development of KICs and to promote KICs in general is of key importance to the regulator. If you can click again, please, Naomi. I think that one of the regulator's main priorities is to maintain confidence in KICs. The number of complaints compared to the number of KICs on the register is minimal. which is an excellent sign as far as we're concerned, which shows that the vast majority of CICs are really doing great work and they're proving a success to the communities they serve. However, we do receive complaints and we treat each and every one seriously and confidentially. And the office also works with other government, regulatory and enforcement agencies to ensure that any matters are properly addressed. The interesting part of the regulator, if you click again, please, Naomi, is the fact that the regulator does have investigatory and enforcement powers. But in the vast majority of cases that we see, concerns and complaints are dealt with successfully at an earlier stage rather than having to move into that regulatory role. However, the regulator does really fully consider concerns raised about serious matters, and she is not afraid to take appropriate action if required, as in her role in the regulator. Next slide, please, Naomi. So, on to the future. I know Naomi mentioned the future of CICs earlier, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I think we all hope that it will be a bright one, no matter what CICs do. The CIC regulator is committed to digital working and to enable CICs to operate their businesses online. And I think that, you know, over the last 3 years, we've enabled the CIC sector to incorporate online and to file their annual accounts and their CIC 34s online. And we are really keen to work closely with Companies House to secure more digitization options for CICs, because we've seen a real uptake in them, and I think it really helps our customers and smooths up that process. If you click for me, please, Naomi. The CICs office has a really active communication strategy of trying to raise awareness of CICs, and this is something that certainly since I've been in the team I'm really passionate about, and we've worked hard to try and develop relationships with Social Enterprise Scotland and others to try and get, you know, awareness of CICs out there and work to, you know, promote what CICs can do. Promotion is really important to us, and I think promotion through digital engagement, particularly given, you know, some of the challenges we've had over the last year, 2 years, has been really important. We tend to publicize high profile CICs across a wide range of businesses through our online blogs, which I would recommend you go and read also. And we do have a really active, albeit small but growing, shall we say, Twitter account, which currently has over 2,700 followers. So if this isn't a plug, but if any of you would wish to follow us, please do feel free to do so. If you click for me again, please, Naomi. The real fact is that CICs have been a real success from what we can see, and they have surpassed all expectations. It's important to reflect on the fact that when CICs began in 2005, the expectation was that we would probably do about 200 incorporations a year, and we now exceed that a month. And the number of CICs, I think, and I believe, it surpassed the total number of cooperatives and community benefit societies. And the regulator welcomes the growth of CICs across every economic sector of the UK. We've been really impressed and, you know, pleased with how CICs have diversified and grown and faced challenges and overcome them, and really looked at how they can continue to support their communities and deliver that benefit exactly where it's needed, depending on what's happening in the world. Our annual report, which should be published in July this year, really sets out the yearly achievements and performance of CICs, and we do like to do a couple of case studies so that people are able to have a look at CICs and see what they've done over the last year. So I would strongly recommend you going and having a read of that when it is published in July, which I feel will be upon us before we even realise it. And then next, please, Naomi. So contact points. If you do require any information, there are numerous ways to contact us. You can email us, you can actually phone us, and you can join us on Twitter, as I've already plugged. And then we have our website. So our office is responsible for everything in terms of community interest companies. We update all of this ourselves. We deal with all ourselves. So it's really personal to us. We deal with ministerial briefings, questions and correspondence, regional information requests, any media inquiries. We try and cover everything that we can, which for a small team is particularly challenging, but it's, you know, it's something which we're really passionate about, because we really do want to communicate and help our customers as best we can. Like I said, please follow us on Twitter, and if you want to have a browse of our website or email, or if you need to phone us, you know, feel free to do so. You know, if there is anything we can help you with regard to community interest companies, we're more than happy to do so. And then next, there is a photo of our website, which actually has been updated recently, but there's lots of information on here which is very interesting. I'm sure that, you know, a number of you will have actually visited it before. but if you haven't, please feel free to do so. And there's lots of helpful information and advice on here. And we're actually undertaking a piece of work at the minute to look to streamline it and try and make it as user-friendly as we can for customers. So, you know, take a look. And then finally, I would just like to say thank you for attending this presentation. And I'd also like to say a really big thank you to Naomi for helping me despite Zoom not behaving when it comes to me being able to share the presentation. So I hope you found that really useful and informative, and that you could hear me and I wasn't speaking too fast.
We could, Dale, and no, you weren't. So thank you very much. And I think it's always interesting to look at that future, and also interesting to get the stats on the number of kicks. So I have to say, while our next speaker's on, I'll probably be looking up what was in the last social enterprise census here in Scotland, because I'm always interested in seeing whether that's changed. Certainly the last time the census came out, it had been a big growth area. So I will probably do that while listening in, I have to say, to Malcolm. So I'm delighted to now bring in Malcolm Harris from Social Enterprise Accountancy CIC, who's going to be sharing his thoughts, I think, with us on their experience of going down the CIC model route. So over to you, Malcolm.
Thank you, and thanks for the chance to be here. I'm just going to share my screen. Please bear with while I engage in this nightmare. And there we go. So is that okay?
That's come through fine, Malcolm. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm just going to start my wee stopwatch thing as well. Start. Okay. So yeah, as I said, thanks for the opportunity to speak. We're a social enterprise. We help companies with everything to do with their financial records, really. People usually come to us for help with completing their accounts and their tax and payroll. I think classic sort of accountancy things. What usually happens though is we end up really helping them with everything from, you know, bookkeeping to them putting together reports for their board and everything in between. So that can be management information for decision making. You know, we help them to sort of maintain a system which gives them financial control. So that could be, you know, managing the grants and things and forecasts. So yeah, we use an action learning approach to do these things. So it's really about giving them the understanding they need in their own business and the financial side of it specifically. You know, we do a lot of coaching in that regard, and you know, empower them to sort of make friends with finance is the sort of buzz phrase that we use. So obviously we're talking about very much like the future of CICs and things today. To be honest, like policy work is not a major focus of ours, but you know, a 30-minute brainstorming session about the sort of issues that are coming up across our client base hopefully has produced some sort of interesting points for you guys. So yeah, I'll dive in. So yeah, the CIC model, you know, benefits, opportunities. Why did we choose it? Obviously, Dale's covered a lot of the sort of the benefits and things before this, but why did we choose it? I mean, I think I joined this organization about a month after, sorry, a year after it was started, but it was really started by our chairperson, Toner, who was struggling to find an accountant who actually understood the social enterprise sector. So really, you know, we started to really make social enterprises thrive. And, you know, becoming a CIC was just a really clear statement of commitment to that. You know, it shows customers, it shows funders that we really live and breathe social enterprise and believe in it as a force for good in our society. So, you know, we think that why do we think it's a force for good? You know, it's just that, you know, the sustainable model of a social enterprise just means that, you know, if it can reach financial sustainability, it can make a really long-term impact, which social impact, which you know, if you're grant dependent the whole time, it can really lead to sort of strategic drift. It can lead to governance problems. You know, we're really excited to help social enterprises get to the point where they're no longer grant dependent. So, opportunities, there's just so many businesses out there which aren't social enterprises, which absolutely could be. And, one of the big opportunities out there is with public sector contracts. I'll speak a bit about that later. The flexibility and adaptability of the KIC model is a huge aspect. And as Still sort of talked about, the light touch regulation there, and the boards and things, we can be a bit more agile. So yeah, that's why we chose it, and why we're passionate about it. Current challenges. So the funding and investment, it's been touched upon. It's a constant topic. Grant funders not understanding the model a lot of the time, just viewing things as either being a charity or business, and there's nothing in between. That could be just like the confidence or familiarity in the asset lock. It's not something we come across a lot. Occasionally we do find funders who just won't fund it. They just want to do registered charities. But obviously, we're not the ones doing this, the applications, so we're probably not best positioned to view of that. What we do find is that a lot of our clients sort of struggling with the fact of their grants being very time bound and very focused on a particular project. There's less funding out there for the central costs and management of the organization in order to create a sustainable model, even though that in our view, and I'm sure everyone, lots of people's view, that would be a much better social return on investment if they were to just invest in a long-term model that's sustainable. More of that would be good. It can affect the strategic control and the sort of governance aspects of organizations. Makes it difficult. They know what they need to do, but it's difficult to do when sometimes they're not social entrepreneur themselves, aren't being paid, even though they've got funding for project officers to work for them. They themselves can't fund their own position. So that's a sort of symptom of the sort of grant sector at the moment. The public sector contracts is, as mentioned, big opportunity, big challenge as well. It should be a bigger opportunity. It should be taken advantage more. So we've only 2 of our clients out of 60 we could think of that were actually getting public sector contracts. Neither of them are actually KICs. They're limited by guarantee, but not a KIC. I don't know if there's a causal link there, but there's research that we've sort of seen that was done by Social Enterprise UK and like with Hustle Trust, I think it is, and even government contracts which were viewed as being suitable for social enterprises weren't actually won by social enterprises. So that's a very small number. There has been some change in the space since then with the Social Value Act, but yeah, since those statistics were out. But yeah, I know this is something that Social Enterprise Scotland are sort of working on and looking at. But yeah, it's just it would be remiss not to mention, I think. So other perceived challenges. Well, these are things that maybe are perceived challenges, but aren't actually necessarily. They're sort of self-fulfilling challenges. So thinking that you won't get paid if you become a KIC as a social entrepreneur. Actually, while you won't be able to pay yourself dividends necessarily, there's option. You can pay yourself through as an employee through PAYE or through payroll. And if you can't fund that, in the first few years, then you can log your time. You can treat that as a director's loan. There's options there. There's also another one is you need to set up a trading subsidiary. We find a lot of our clients getting told that, whereas actually the whole point of a KIC is that you can do a lot of trading. That's the whole point of it. It's not got that same restriction as a SKIO does. So while there may be times where it makes sense, we're finding people get advice to do that a lot when there's not really any reason to do that. Okay, so potential solutions. It's fantastic to have the likes of Social Enterprise Scotland sort of focusing on this outreach, raising the profile of social enterprise, and the KIC regulator as well, which is all going to help these things, getting public sector, NHS, housing associations, just the public in general, just more familiar with KICs, so they don't have this charity business sort of dichotomy in their heads. You know, one thing that we discuss is, could tighter regulation actually help with that? You know, that's probably a controversial suggestion, but you know, from our view, you know, I think it would help allay some of the public's concern, you know, those stakeholders' concerns about, you know, whether value can be extracted from that. I think the asset lock is something that maybe they don't understand, but actually, you know, if it was, you know, if there's other things you could point to as well that would help them restore their confidence, I think that could probably help a lot. You know, it might help to secure tax breaks as well, which is another challenge that we're finding. You know, people don't choose to be a social enterprise for tax efficiency. It's not one of the motivations of social entrepreneurs, but actually, you know, it would massively help them to make better social impact if they did have some tax breaks. Social investment tax relief being an example of one of those, but it's quite limited in its scope, in how, you know, it's great that it's been renewed. It's quite limited though in how, you know, the opportunity, the number of times it can be used, or a number of cases in which it can be used. But it's an example of how, you know, if you get social investment tax relief, you have to go through a greater level of scrutiny in order to get it, and so that it's viewed as being, you know, the tax relief is dependent on that greater level of scrutiny. So I guess it's a conversation that, you know, we're sort of interested in. We're not by any means expert on the policy level and things, because we're focused on helping our clients. But that's what our experience has been. So yeah, I'm really excited to sort of see how this conversation goes, and yeah, let me know if there are any questions or anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. It's always interesting, I think, to get perspectives from organisations that are KICs themselves. So no doubt we'll be coming back to some of the issues you raise in the chat, and I can see that the chat's quite lively as well in terms of questions for today's session. So what I'm going to do is ask you to take down your screen share, and we're going to bring on our last speaker for today, which is Alex Stobart from Mydex CIC. And once Alex has spoken, we'll hopefully have some time for some questions just at the end. So over to you, Alex, and then I'm hopeful we've got a good 15 minutes just for some questions at the end. So
hello everyone, I'm here in Edinburgh, Alex Stobart, and thank you to Dale and Donna and Malcolm for what they've already said. I work for a KIC called Mydex. It's based here in Edinburgh, Scotland. I'm also a trustee at Social Enterprise Scotland, and I noticed in the chat window, so I can say we bank with the Co-op, and the Co-op have been supportive of our banking arrangements since we started in 2007. And we're a KIC that registered by shares in 2007. Our community is the citizens and carers and those who live in communities and work in organisations here in Scotland, the rest of the UK, and in some instances elsewhere across the world. And our work as a KIC is really with and for the people who make up that community. And the reason being that we help to design and deliver fairer, inclusive, person-centered services for citizens. And that's mainly, therefore, at the moment with the internet. And it's about how a KIC and society can work to a fairer way of enabling and empowering citizens with a personal data infrastructure. We think that that's aligned with and part of being in this model, being a KIC. It's about trust, relationships, and the differentiation and regulation has helped us to win business and contracts with central governments, with local government, with NHS, and with others in the third sector. Our customers are mainly organisations. We do not charge individuals to use our service. Our main service for an individual we call a personal data store, and that helps them to collect and store and share their own data, and importantly, under their control. We did also in this venture work to become a fair data supplier, as we thought at the time fair trade and social purpose might gain momentum. I think it's probably fair to say that hasn't happened as quickly as we would have liked, but certainly in Scotland, we have lots of very good words around both the opportunities and the challenges of converting those words into deeds. The well-being economy, tackling poverty, reducing inequalities, climate change, social justice, person-centered services. All of these things offer, I think, CICs and others an opportunity to obtain and deliver services and build a business model that is right. The difficulties have come with the funding and the understanding of CICs, and I think there's been plenty of talk about that. And I think the regulator does and can continue to help us to publicise and assure the quality of the CIC community. One area where I think we do need help is for the public sector to work with us. There are elements of legislation that support us. There's something called the light touch procurement regime that allows providers of health and care services to deliver services up to 750,000 without necessarily having a competition, but it's only used haphazardly and non-consistently in Scotland and south of the border. And I think Social Enterprise Scotland and others have been watching the Adabawali Commission that has concluded social investment is really not doing what had been hoped. And there's now going to be an important new push to enable the structure and the ability of patient capital to be awarded to CICs and other social enterprises. So that's a very quick run through, and I think that'd be time for questions. Hopefully there's a few.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm going to invite all of our panelists on now, because I know there's been a few questions. Some are detailed and just some responses. And I think it's interesting. I'm following some of the chat about, I think someone had asked about how many community interest companies there are in relation to other companies. And obviously still, you know, the majority of companies in the UK will be private limited companies. I think even within the social enterprise sector, but I thought it was interesting to just also pull out some of the statistics from the census that I said I'd do. So in the 2019 census, and that is currently being updated and new data should come out soon, there were 884 CICs. So the fact that we've gone up to 1,453, I think shows that there's still that real interest and growth. And I think in 2019, the data said that there'd been a 60% increase, so definitely growing. And in comparison, just to give you a sense of other companies limited by guarantee in that census, it was 2,558, and SCIO 683, again another newer kind of way of setting up as a charity. So, you know, this is a landscape, I think, that's definitely, it's constantly changing actually. And I think as increasing interest comes in that kind of social model of doing business, we're seeing new ways of company registration come in. So I was perhaps going to come in with a first question just to Dale, if I may, if our presenters are, I can hear.
I hope you can hear me.
We can, and I can see Malcolm now. So it was interesting to me that I think increasingly we're also seeing traditional companies, so companies limited, private limited companies, also setting up within their mem and arts as mission locked. So they're finding a different way rather than going down the CIC route than locking mission into their business. Do you think that's a threat for the CIC model moving forwards, Dale?
I don't think so. I think it's a completely different feel. I think the thing that I've certainly come across as being enrolled is the fact that I feel that KICs now are firmly established. I really think they made their mark in the UK, and the potential for growth with KICs is there. Also, I think with the added elements of regulation that come with being a KIC, I think there's that added confidence with KICs, which I think, you know, give it's a UK recognized brand now. And I think that it being a UK recognized brand, I don't see it being threatened by that at all, because of because, as I've detailed, the requirements around being a KIC are so specific and unique, I think, actually, to the KIC, you know, model, that I think it really it sets it apart. So I don't see it as a threat. I think, you know, not that I'm overwhelmingly, you know, biased towards KICs, but I think I am. They are unique, and I think they completely earn their place without having to feel threatened by anything in that regard.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's different models for different types of business, isn't it? I think, and it's interesting. Obviously, you'll have seen in some of the chat, I think one of the questions is about the disadvantages of KICs, and I guess you've just noted you're obviously biased. You're very supportive of the KIC model. I just wonder whether it'd be interesting in terms of just picking up on what you think some of the disadvantages. Who is it not suitable for?
I think well, as I pointed out in the meeting, I think you're exactly right, Naomi. I think you've summed me up quite rightly. You know, in fact, that it would be extremely hard for me to talk about the disadvantages of KICs, because I personally don't see any. But I think it's really important, as I said in my presentation, the fact that KICs are not politically motivated. That is not what they're initially designed for. And I think that if you are wanting to set up a business that does have more of a political motivation, and we have seen KICs come through and kind of wander into a difficult kind of, you know, a situation where they have wandered into the more political elements of, you know, of the general UK generally. That is where they can fall apart. KICs are there to provide their social purpose, and to, you know, which has been set down in their, you know, memorandums, and that is what their purpose is for. And I think that it's really important to remember that, you know, there are certain things that a KIC simply isn't suitable for. And I think that if you wish to be political in that way, whether it be aligning yourself with a particular political party, KIC probably isn't the model for you effectively. That's just one example. But in terms of the disadvantages, I really think it really depends. I think I only see the advantage when it comes to KICs because you have flexibility. Although, having said that, I understand why some KICs do convert to being charities, because I think obviously it's a completely different structure which can benefit them. And, you know, if you're willing to perhaps fall into bigger restrictions and have that motivation to do it for the purposes you need to, then I think that's absolutely fine, you know. And I can understand why, but otherwise, I have to confess it's very hard for me to list the disadvantages of being a KIC.
Thank you. I mean, I guess I know in our last session with you, we had a few funders in, because we know that, and I guess that's the reason why people would convert to a charity. Some funders obviously don't fund the KIC model, and they're much more attuned to the charity model. And I think that's changing, and it's definitely changed over time, but it's still there for some. And I guess I know in the chat, this kind of that there's been stuff talked about gift aid, and I certainly, you know, there's some organisations that might offer pro bono or bits of support to the charity sector that doesn't come through to the KIC sector. So there are some of those bits in terms of how you raise finance. I think the perception bit's interesting, and it's changing. I'm going to ask Alex and Malcolm, perhaps Alex first and then Malcolm. Have you come across any advantages or disadvantages, sorry, of being a KIC?
Well, I would say the advantages are that it is a guiding light. I mean, your business model, your social purpose, the reason why you exist can be helpfully added to and embedded in being a KIC, for the same reason that a charity has its memorandum and articles, and for the same reason that the private sector model is focused on profit. The challenge for KICs, I think, is to be understood and recognized, and to earn their place in the minds of the public sector and of customers. And that's a long-term game that will, I think, as Dale was suggesting, take place as more and more KICs are created and awareness grows.
Thank you. And Malcolm?
Yeah, I'd probably, echo what's been said. It's very much that sort of long-term understanding across all the different stakeholders that of what a kick actually is, and the sort of the level of protection that gives towards its community interest sort of credentials. I think that's the big thing, that the disadvantage being, I suppose, that hasn't yet fully happened, and that can present challenges in terms of funding and procurement. Yeah.
If we could quickly jump in there as well. Sorry, Naomi. I was going to say.
Yeah, if you could speak up a bit, Dale. Just.
Well, that's something which had been on our agenda, actually. I mean, we've always done a lot to encourage people to become KICs, but obviously the feedback we've had is that often it's the visibility with the funders that, in terms of the KIC social structure and what KICs are, that is something that has been perhaps lacking. So that's something which we've also tried to do of late, and it's definitely on our agenda to do moving forward as well. I know we recently did a presentation for Inspiring Scotland, and they had a number of funders attend, and it was just a case of trying to kind of get the message out there about KICs and promote the KIC brand, because I feel like that's what KICs really need, to demystify it, you know what I mean? To get funders to kind of buy into it a bit more. So that is on our agenda, and that is something which we're looking at for the future.
Thank you. And I guess the other one, I mean, I know certainly in Scotland there have been some of those debates in terms of, I think particularly about the kick by shares model, and whether that has a strong enough asset lock within it. And I guess again it's that suitability, isn't it, in terms of what's right for a particular business and the way it's set up, that I think becomes of interest. And I'm seeing one of the questions coming in is quite a detailed question from a KIC that was set up as a KIC limited by shares, just in terms of obviously it had support. I think people will have seen this in the chat, but it had support in the early days from one organisation that put in quite a lot more of the share capital, and obviously 15 years later the KIC is worth more on paper now. And an interesting question on how that kind of moves on and moves forward. And I guess because KICs are relatively new, those experiences of looking at KICs in the future is quite new, I would imagine. Dale, would that be fair to say?
I would agree, and particularly for me, considering I've only been in the role for a year. But I think what we have seen is KICs have changed. They have changed significantly from what they were. They've developed, they've adapted, they've grown more than I think we would ever have imagined when I think it first started out in 2005. And I think that there will be more and more challenges coming through. You know, when you think about KICs in the grand scheme, it's a very small amount of time the KICs has existed. And they've already achieved so much, and we've already come up against things that we've never had to deal with before, you know. So I think there's going to be a huge period of growth and of change. And, you know, like I said, I think the future is bright. And that's the way that I like to think of it.
I mean, I think it's interesting looking back, for those of you that have seen, I guess it's the question that's come in from Brian that was particularly about looking at the HISES KIC, which I think was the first KIC set up here in Scotland. It'd be interesting, I think, I don't want to put you on the spot in terms of answering quite a complex question, because I know you've put in the chat about going away to look at it, but I wonder whether it's worth us doing a blog or a post in the future that answers some of those questions, because I think they'll be useful questions for other people in the webinar to understand as well.
Happy to do that. Donna and I were speaking, and I said to her, I think we need to get our thinking caps on a little bit with this one, because often we'll have questions which even we need to consider and do a little bit of investigation in. And, you know, if we do come up with the answer and it's beneficial for everyone, really happy to share that, answer when we finally come to our conclusion.
No, I think that would be helpful, and we'll certainly pick up with you on that. I think, because again, with this being a new structure, I think none of us have seen that kind of, I guess, history and track record in terms of KICs as they close as well, because they're much newer in terms of a model. So I'm just looking through any of the Q&A, because I know there's a lot of questions up here. Some very specific questions that there might be quite direct answers to. If a limited company wants to convert to a KIC and has people ready to join the board, but they can't quite meet yet, can the company convert and add board members the month after? So it's just a question of timing, but I don't know if there's a direct answer to that. I think
Interesting.
Donna's come in with an answer on the Q&A. I'm bringing it up on the forum so that everyone can learn from it. So I don't know whether Donna, you want to come in and say what your answer was in the chat function, in the Q&A function.
Yes, sorry, I was just answering the other questions in the chat.
That's okay. It's a busy session.
So yeah, sorry, with this one, sorry, just trying to see if I can find it. Yes, obviously I replied to Gabrielle, and yeah, because it's to do with board members, that's absolutely fine. We only require the signatures of all the CIC directors at the point of conversion. So you can always set up the board members in further detail later once CIC's been established.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask perhaps another question just in terms of a general question just on impact, because obviously we know impact's critical to a CIC, and I might ask both Alex and Malcolm how they talk about the impact they have in terms of, I guess, showing why they're a community interest company. As a regulator, do you look for companies to do that kind of much more of that impact reporting, and how much do you look into that, Dale?
It's something which we do look into. I think it's really interesting to get a picture of the whole picture of a CIC in terms of like what it's delivering, or what the benefits it's carrying out, and any kind of successes it's had in the year. You know, and that varies depending on what the CIC has been dealing with, but it's something which we do discuss at length. And when we identify a CIC that really has had a significant impact, we often will approach them for information to use in blogs, or indeed to put in our annual report to show it a good example of this CIC has achieved X, you know what I mean, and discuss it at length to sort of celebrate them, because I think it's really important that we do celebrate those CICs who really do have a great positive impact on the community that they set themselves up to deliver. And we're always keen to discover good news stories that we can share in terms of CICs.
Great. And perhaps I might come just to Malcolm and then Alex. How do you kind of look at showing impact and show that community side of your business in terms of the work that you've done?
Yeah, I think this is probably one area where it's. I think it depends on what the nature of your business is can influence how easy it is to report on to quite a large degree. So where we see our social impact is in improving the sort of internal sort of management and control of social enterprises, and making sure they make good decisions and that they're able to meet their regulatory requirements without it becoming too great a burden on the directors. So it's really improving the effectiveness of different social enterprises. So that's quite a difficult thing to measure. But what we tend to do with our CIC-34 forum and things like that is really to seek sort of just verbal sort of like comments from our different clients on what their perception of their overall impact has been on their organization. We're quite a new organization, so we're still developing how do we capture this more effectively, but yeah, that's definitely on the front of our mind.
Yeah, no, I know that how we demonstrate impact is key for a lot of social enterprises, and it's not always that easy to do actually sometimes. Alex, in terms of kind of how you show that kind of social impact side?
Well, I think CIC-34s and the reports that go on the public register, applications when there's a tender, and sharing as you go along. So case studies or other methods to feed into Social Enterprise Scotland and other bodies. It's an ongoing process.
Thank you. I'm just coming in, the chat's been so busy. I'm trying to keep up with all the questions. So we will share the slides with everyone so that people will have contact details. Go on, Alex.
I was just going to come back to Sally Ann. Sally Ann, absolutely agree with you. And there is now a possibility with the latest procurement changes by the Scottish Government for the social enterprise sector to try and work on that with ministers and civil servants.
So that's coming back to the question about CICs being able to raise finance and philanthropic funding again that was in the chat.
And legal definition.
Yes. Yes, I think it's tough, isn't it? I think because this sector has, I mean, it's changed in my experience and time within it in terms of legal definitions and how they're viewed, and continues to change, that I think a lot of people always call out for a bit of a definition from government on what social enterprise is. And I know it's, as someone that has to describe social enterprise quite a lot, it's much harder to understand when there are lots of different legal structures people can take, I think it's fair to say. So always a challenge. I'm conscious we're at 12:30, so I'm just gonna come in with the kind of, I know we've talked quite positively about KICs all through this session, and we've tried to bring in a bit of the balance, but could you just say what's the one reason you went down the KIC route, and why would you recommend it, from Malcolm and Alex? And then I'll just come in with Dale on a closing comment on just a note from the regulator if people have got any questions on how to contact them.
Okay. So I think, you know, to summarise it, it's because we want to sort of live and breathe the social enterprise sector. It's not the only form of social enterprise, but it was a really clear way of showing that just how committed we are to our social mission. And that there was no other ulterior motives, and to give that stamp of credibility.
Yeah, so a real stamp around reputation and intention.
Yeah.
Alex?
Yeah, mission and purpose, and then serving the community.
Yeah, community interest. It's what it's all about, I guess. So Dale, I'm just going to come in with you just for a final comment, just in terms of today. If people have got, we've obviously got that very specific question that we'll put an answer in a blog around, I think, in terms of KICs and shares at that point in the future. In terms of just any general queries, just reinforce, how do people get in touch with you as the regulator? Because I think it's important that people know that you're kind of open and there. So I'll give you that chance to just say that again.
We are completely open, and I think we really do value speaking to our customers, and particularly to KICs who have questions, because I think we're always keen to kind of provide help and advice and guidance. You can phone us or contact us on the contact details which I previously put up there. Email is a really good way. We're really happy to have a conversation with you. We can set out any questions to your points. I know there have been some specific questions asked about specific KICs as well, which I think will probably need to be investigated a little bit more to kind of give the kind of a really full answer. But yeah, really happy to pick up with you guys as well in Social Enterprise Scotland to kind of answer a couple of the questions. And also, I just wanted to quickly say, really nice to hear from Malcolm and Alex. I really love to hear from KICs who, frankly, probably have been in longer existence than I have as the KIC in the deputy regulator role. And really good to kind of hear what you guys have been doing, and kind of to hear directly from KICs about their experience, I think is actually worth its weight in gold. So I really appreciate that. Thank you both. But yeah, if you have any queries, please don't hesitate to contact us. When we will get back to you as soon as we can. But whilst at the same time managing expectations, we are a very small team with quite a high level of queries. So please, bear with us, shall I say.
Absolutely. It's a phrase a few of us use, I think, at times, Dale, so we get it completely, don't worry. I would just like to say thank you. It's great, I think, to have KICs join us on the session as well as the regulator, and we're really pleased to be able to bring these sessions. I think it's important that we don't feel like the regulators are a closed shop, so it's really nice to be able to host these sessions with you, Dale and Donna. So thank you very much. Thank you to Alex and Malcolm. I'm going to turn off the video, but just for a few minutes I'll just keep the session just live in case anyone wants to go back through the chat, and I will pick up independently. I think someone's just asking specifics about contact details, so I'll pick up that everyone's okay with that before I pass them on, and I'll pick up with you, Brian, and with Dale, just in terms of maybe looking at that blog and answering that very specific query, because I think it would be really interesting to lots of our participants. So thank you very much for joining us this week. I think I'm rushing off today and take a painkiller for my back. So thank you for your patience. I hope I didn't pull any squirmy faces while you were speaking, and have a great day, everyone. Really nice to see you. Take care.